Now today's video's background noise will be loud again, because we're talking about an old airliner. Yes, finally, as you can see in the title and as you can see right in front of you, we're gonna talk about the Douglas DC-8. And the Douglas DC-8 was one of the first jet airliners by Douglas, and in general, one of the first jet airliners. So yeah, let's talk about that one today and kinda compare this plane to the Boeing 707, which was pretty much the direct competition of this plane. You know, the DC-8 and the 707 are extremely similar. But yeah, this is the DC-8. It came out in 1958 and it was produced till 1972. And there are still some models flying around, yes. Now, how should we begin? Let's just check out the plane. This is the cockpit. I mean, it kind of looks like a cockpit from the 1950s, really. I mean, what can you say? Do we have any dome lighting in here? Because it's kind of dark, whatever. Yeah, this looks like quite a normal plane from 1958, obviously. You know, we have manual steam gauges as instruments that you can these days only find in some general aviation aircraft, obviously, or some old commercial aircraft in service still. This one does have an FMC, a flight management computer. This is probably a newer version of the DC-8. Yeah, there were several versions of the DC-8. I mean, again, this is a typical plane from 1958. You even had another person sitting in the back of the cockpit watching mostly the engines and the pressurization system so that the pilots could concentrate on flying a little bit more. But honestly, this cockpit is more on the simpler side to fly, you know, especially if you look at cockpits like the Concorde or these other old planes were a lot more complicated, but whatever. Let's check out the cabin as well. Maybe there is one. Yes, there is one. This cabin looks more of like a longer 737 really. We have a 3x3 seating system here. Well, look how much leg room they had back in the days. That's pretty cool. But yeah, let's see how this plane flies. Let's actually just go ahead and fly it, I guess. Right, engines are on full power. Let's just take off. Oh wow, this is pretty loud. Gotta turn my headphones down, definitely. Yeah, these old planes were just extremely loud. And so was this one. Alright, we have reached around 100 knots and the plane actually rotates from itself. That is a little weird. Okay, alright. We are just safely flying. And there we go. We have entered a stable climb. All is good. I mean, the plane flies just like any other plane after all. Now, just looking at the DC-8, it looks very much like just a normal Douglas plane. You know, the Douglas planes just had a very interesting design language to them. You know, back when Douglas was still a thing. For example, this is the MD-80, which came out a lot later than the DC-8. But you can definitely tell some similarities to this plane and to the DC-8, especially in the nose area if you take a look at that. But to be honest, it's always like that. The 707 looks very similar to the 737, and all the Airbus planes also have a similar nose design. But yeah, let's actually do some comparisons now. Let's compare the DC-8 to the 707 a bit. Actually, these planes were extremely similar. Both planes were around 150 feet long. Why am I talking in past tense? The planes still exist and they still fly. That's kind of cool, by the way. The wingspan of both planes are around 140 feet. The maximum takeoff weight is also very similar at 336,000 pounds. Cruise speed is also pretty similar. The 707 is a little bit faster by like 29 miles per hour, which is not too much. And the range of both planes are also very similar at around 6,000 miles. In fact, they even had the same engines, the JT3D turbofans by Pratt & Whitney. And actually both planes carried 144 passengers. Yes, both planes. And they came out at around the same time. The 707 came out in 1957, around that time, and the DC-8 came out in 1958 or 1959. Looking at the numbers, the 707 did a lot better at around 1,000 built. Yes, 1,000 707s were built, and there are still like 100 or so flying around, which is amazing. The Douglas DC-8 did a lot worse at around 500 sales, which is still a lot, don't get me wrong here, but obviously that's only half as much. And there are like 11 DC-8s still flying around, which is still pretty good, at least for like a 70-year-old plane, right? Now let's try landing this one. I always like to see how a plane lands, because that's when you really get to know how it handles. Now obviously looking at crash numbers is always pretty dumb, honestly, but both planes had very similar crash statistics actually. The Boeing 707 had 170 losses, and the DC-8 had 80 losses so far. Oof. So the 707 had twice as many losses as the DC-8, but you have to consider that there were twice as many 707s flying around in the first place, which means that the planes had similar crash statistics. Oh damn, look at the flaps angle, Jesus Christ. I haven't actually noticed that. Now overall, you can say that both planes were pretty damn nice, even though I've read that the DC-8 was a little bit better to fly on. And from the pilot's perspective, I've read a Reddit post from a pilot that flew both the DC-8 and the 707, and he said that the planes flew very similarly. So also from the pilot's side, there is no difference really. And yeah, that guy said that both planes were really fun to fly. You know, that was back in the days where you would actually fly the aircraft as a pilot and not the autopilot. So yeah, if I had an airline back in the 1950s or 60s, I don't know, I would have probably gone for the DC-8. I don't know why, that's just personal taste, but it doesn't quite matter. These planes are super duper similar, so whatever. Alright, let's just land this one for the first time. Let's try this time not slamming this one onto the runway. Well, that was acceptable. Alright, so yeah guys, what do you think about the DC-8? Do you think the 707 is better than this plane? I mean, obviously the planes are kind of the same anyway, but it doesn't matter. And so yeah guys, thank you for watching today's video, and I'll see you tomorrow. As always, good night.